Well, we had a welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday, joined now by our good friend Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, and a lot's going on. The NFL, Mike's happy. The Steelers are winning again. They had a game last night on TV on the Manning Cast. I was watching the Manning Cast, by the way, and they have Bill Belichick on each week with him to start the game. They also had LT with them, and yes. I was trying to, and Bill Belichick called him the greatest defensive player in history of the NFL, and I believe that. I mean, there was no more ferocious player. I mean, if you want to have fun, go back and watch the NFL films, and there's no better film of any sporting events than the NFL films, how they do that. They have done that for decades. But when they have those guys mic'd up, there's no better sense of any sport than football when you get those guys mic'd up, because you hear every crunch, every sound, all the crap talk, but how hard these hits really are. I don't think people can get any kind of true concept of how rough that game is unless you watch something like that.
Or if you if you played any football at all, and if you did, I'm sure at some point you took a hit like that. I certainly did. I played 8th grade football, and I took a hit from the great Dennis Brumfield that literally knocked me back 5 yards. I was playing defensive end, and the offensive tackle blocked. He double teamed on the guard on the defensive tackle, and that meant I was free, and I wandered in the backfield thinking, hey, I'm going to make a play. And Dennis Brumfield came around from left halfback and literally knocked me back 5 yards. So if you feel that, then you multiply it by many years and many days in the weight room. You know that what happens in the NFL, a lot of times I wonder how they get up and survive that. But and withstand it. I guess survive is a bad word, but withstand it and be able to come back and do it again and again and again. It's an amazing thing that the NFL players do.
Absolutely. It certainly is, but they do it, and they do it every week. And but here recently, and not that this is going to be a big subject today, but I just ironically was looking at some stuff from the Pacers loss last night. And Rick Carlisle, I forget who it was now. That
TJ McConnell. I know that's what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yes. I almost said TJ McConnell. I'm like, it can't be TJ McConnell. This is not him. But when he said his legs look tired, I was like, what? And then this is coming on the heels of Anthony Richardson's unbelievable quote that he made, in which he took himself out because I did a lot of running and I was tired. And I'm like, what? I'm sure his offensive line loved hearing that, but I'm like, what the hell is going on?
I did not see what happened with Anthony on Sunday. But remember this was his decision. TJ didn't not play himself. I mean, he was not put into the game because his coach judged that he didn't like what he saw for whatever reason. And there have been lots of things to not like about the Pacers start, but you can't. In the case of TJ, I mean, if you don't put him out there, he can't do what he does, and he may or may not be well. He may or may not be healthy. That's the thing that I think is underappreciated by the sports media in general, is that we don't know from day to day, from play to play, whether or not the player is healthy, and how a player reacts to not being healthy can be a multitude of different things. But that's something that I'm very cautious about. I always try to be sure that that you're aware of whether or not the player's healthy. And when you see in one game something come up and a player doesn't give effort, that's different than, and again, I'm not ascribing that to Anthony because I did not see it. But when we can all see when players don't give effort, and And it's pretty easy to judge that it's not a function of health. But when you see a player repeatedly fall below their standard, what they've given you for X number of months or years or whatever, and they're not doing it now, I think sometimes the first question should be, is he okay? And especially in the NFL, I think that should be the first question. Is he okay? Because there's so many ways to not be okay in that league.
Absolutely. And it's a long, if we're talking about the NBA, it's an 82 game season where you're playing every couple of games, you're traveling. And a lot of people are like, oh, poo-pooing that. And I'm like, it's not as easy as it sounds, people. Going to do a job at 8 o'clock at night where you've got or early in the day where you've got it's a mindset. It's a whole different thing, but it's just funny to see that. And then now we also have, speaking of health and players being healthy, Jack Tuttle retiring from the game, current Michigan quarterback, former Indiana quarterback. He's dealt with multiple concussions. He also had an issue with his medial or ulnar collateral ligament that he said just didn't fully heal. He only played 2 games for Michigan this season, and so they've lost a guy. Cade McNamara, not on the depth chart for Iowa. Boy, it's a lot of facets, a lot of ins and outs for my big Lebowski fans out there.
It's college football is tougher to play now than it has ever been, and it's always been really difficult. I think that's something that we have to be aware of. It's something that I've been itching to write about and just haven't gotten the opportunity. When we see every time you have a coach go through a losing streak, they are placed on the hot seat by the media. And I will tell you, Jim, I have declined to ever write a hot seat article. I have my bosses at the Sporting News know I will not do that. I don't believe in it. It's not my position to say you win or you're losing your job. I just don't think I can judge whether someone does a good job or not. I don't feel uncomfortable doing that. And then it's up to their bosses to decide what to do about that. But one thing that as I was mentioning, that I think is important to note is that you can't think like it's really even like it's 2015 if you're a college athletics program. You're going to have years like Kentucky football is having right now, where you just can't get anything done, and you're way below what you maybe thought you were this year, and you're certainly way below what you have been in recent years. And if every time you hit one of those years now in college sports, with as transitory as it can be, with obviously, as we mentioned before, the number of injuries that can impact the season. If every time you hit one of those years, you say, that's it, push the button, the guy's gone, or the woman's gone, depending on the sport. If you do that every time, you are damaging your product and you will have a difficult time sustaining success. It can't be 1 year. I mean, Florida State, for instance, there are a lot of people itchy down there because they're terrible, and they are terrible. But a year ago, they won 13 games in a row, or 13 games in a row, I believe it was. 12-0 in the regular season, won the ACC championship, 13 games in a row. And Mike Norvell did a great job of building them to that. Now they're awful. They lost a bunch of players to the pros. They didn't get enough guys in the transfer portal, whatever. If you say, okay, Mike Norvell got really dumb overnight, come on. I mean, what are we doing? You have to have patience now. If you don't have patience, you are going to damage your own program. If a coach goes a couple of years like that, or 3 years like that, okay, maybe then that coach has just not been able to figure out the new circumstance. Or you hire somebody and they have, one good year and then a couple of bad years like that. Maybe they were never that good and you just made a bad judgment in the first place. But if you've hired a coach and they've been successful and you pull the trigger on removing them just because of one unsuccessful year, you are failing to judge what college sports are now. There are going to be tough years, and you have to be able to endure those years to get to the good ones.
Yeah, they finally got to the good ones at Indiana, but we'll get to all that in the next segment with Mike. But the Colts, speaking of the Colts, man, they've got a gigantic quandary on their hands when you have your guy that is supposed to be your guy, who is supposed to be your leader, even though there's no way he has the maturity, he has the experience to be that leader. There's no way he can. How the hell is he, especially now after what he just did, but how is he supposed to go into a huddle, look these 10-year veteran offensive linemen in the eye and get any respect whatsoever? I was trying to find a thing to send out on Twitter yesterday of, you remember, and I'm talking about the original, not the remake, The Longest Yard, when Burt Reynolds, he has to go out, he has to tank it to get that 21-point lead up that was demanded by the warden, and then he goes back in to try to recover everything, and they're like, screw you, and the offensive line just stands there and lets everybody just destroy him. I was trying to find that to post that because I'm thinking that's what Anthony Richardson's next snap is going to look like. But I couldn't find it. But that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, they're like, dude, they're out there busting their butts every play, and there's probably no harder position physically, game in, game out, play in, play out, than being on the line. You're having a car crash every play. And I don't know that he, well, obviously he didn't think, but boy, this experiment is looking more and more precarious each week.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I didn't like the pick at the beginning, Jim, because he didn't have enough experience. He wasn't ready for the NFL. And the problem you have is, I'm not a believer in put him out there and let him figure it out. It doesn't work. Who have we seen that does that? I mean, Peyton already had it figured out. He just had a terrible team around him when he went 2-14 or whatever he went in his rookie year. It was never a question of whether he would figure it out. It was just a question of getting 10 other guys out there that could play at his level, and then ultimately he would be a superstar. Anthony Richardson didn't play enough football at Florida for you to get a good gauge on what he would be. And the conundrum is that if you don't play him, then he never gets that experience. But if you play him before he's ready, then he gets bad experiences. I mean, that's why baseball has AA, AAA, single A, because you need to fail a little bit against players that have less talent than you, and then build toward the success. And in Anthony's case, he just wasn't at Florida long enough, or just didn't have, he was there long enough, but he wasn't in that position long enough to build that success level and to have that experience of having, made the wrong decision here. Okay, next time I don't make that decision, I make the right decision. He never got to the right decision. That's the problem that happens when you draft a player with as limited experience as he had at Florida. And as gifted as he is as a runner and thrower in terms of his dynamism and his arm strength, I just don't think he had enough experience. And you either live with his poor play for now and hope that he eventually conquers it. I'm not a believer that when you fail at this level that you're eventually going to do it very often. But I don't know what other choice you have. I mean, you've put yourself in this position by investing in him as your next quarterback, by investing that high pick 3 or 4 in the first round, and then by putting yourself in position for him to be your regular starter. I don't know what other option you have other than to ride this for a while.
Well, and Chris Ballard, his job is definitely on the line. There are a lot of people that have just it's not been in his camp. It's been a kind of an up and down roller coaster tenure. And if his job goes how Anthony Richardson goes, if this fails, which it's not heading in the right direction, I mean, they probably would have won. It's hard to say that, but they would have won at least one other game right now if they had Joe Flacco.
Yeah.
But Joe Flacco, they've got him on the sideline, I think.
I mean, there are things about Joe Flacco that are not ideal, but he knows exactly what he is. And
he's 39 years old and he doesn't get tired.
What's because he doesn't move? He stands back there and waits for you to make a mistake, and then he exploits it. That's what he did with the Browns last year, and it's what he did against the Steelers when he replaced Anthony earlier this year. He knows what he's doing. He had, by the time he got to the Ravens in 2007, 2008, he had experience as a backup at Pitt, and then ultimately, I think 2 full seasons at Delaware. He was ready to play, and again was surrounded by a great team when he broke into the lineup with the Ravens, and that certainly helps you. But I mean, you're looking at a team in the Colts that are successful in a lot of other areas. I mean, that's the thing about Chris Ballard is he's made a lot of really good decisions too. Jonathan Taylor, with Alec Pierce, those were really good pickups. Mo Alley Cox back when pulled a guy out of hoops and turned him into a football player. I mean, they made some good choices over the years, but they risked a lot when they selected Anthony that high in the draft. And I for relative to the Colts, I did not think it was the ideal choice at the time. And I don't think much about how they have handled Anthony since has been ideal either.
We'll sure see. We've got lots more coming up. We're going to switch to college football with Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News when we come back. On the other side of this, brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East, located on College Mall Road in Bloomington. If you're coming into town for a game or you already live here. Also on Thursday nights, that is where you can find Inside Indiana Football with Don Fisher and the man of the hour all over the country, Kurt Signetti. He is there as well. So we'll be back with more right after this.